So in Visual Studio, you can right-click on any of the text and edit a style and choose Apply a Resource. If this control will contain some sort of an available text inside it, you can simply use one of the defaults. If not, you can customize your own. But always think that when you are customizing your own, it depends on what are the styles that the user will choose for the application. For the full set of guidelines that you can use for Windows 8, please navigate to msdn.microsoft.com/en/us library HH20. Actually, I can copy and paste for them. Good.
Can you do that?
Yep. Just give me a second. We're good. Okay. So there are some practices, which is I would really call it a personal guidelines and practice, because I've been working a lot with Windows Phone 8 and Windows 8, and I needed help for this kind of stuff. So I decided to group all the components together in a single slide. So first of all, there is a difference between grids and tag panels, like the one we discussed earlier. Grids are not tables. Don't use it for displaying list of items. It's a way of planning where are you going to place everything. Use tag panels that you want it to be a fixed size or a fixed width between one element and the other. If you are expecting a very long inside your stack panel, always think about surrounding with another control called scroll viewer. I don't have this title, by the way. So content control, it's another component inside the Windows 8 application, the Windows Phone 8 application that you can use for displaying an entity. Because when we think about an application, you are not going to send different attributes from your from one area to the application, like the services, to your phone. You are going to send a full component that you want to display. So you can say, for example, instead of just adding all the text boxes in the page itself, you can use a style and bind this control to the style directly, which is one of the samples that we are going to build today. Okay. In images, always think about building a class for managing the images inside the application. Always reading and writing of application has been completely changed in Windows Phone 8, so always take that into consideration when designing one. And I believe we can take a break for 10 minutes or something for everyone, or we can continue. You can say. Good call, guys. Good, so I believe the people are excited. Good, so let's move a little, let's keep going. So for now, what we did is we played quickly with the layout of the different controls. Let's take this quickly on a sample of one of the applications that we are going to develop together. So let me again back to my desktop. And I would say that for this page, which would contain nothing, let's first tell the application I need to connect to a data source. So let's go and pull some data from our web services, for example. So I will say choose, yep, let's do this and click go. This is what we're calling it a web service reference, where I have a set of methods lying on one of my servers like Azure and any backend I have, and I need to connect on it to pull my data. So we can say, for example, call this the activities service, and then click add. This will automatically add a new folder in my solution called service reference, and it will add a reference for my activity services as a part of the application. Okay, so this is for me, just I've added a quick service reference. Now let's go for the application main page and let's start writing some code. So let's say I need to load data, and for this method I will just go and generate method for me. remove this exception, and let's go for the activities service dot create a new instance for the activities client. I will call this the client, and it will equal to the activities client. Now client dot load or get activities by trap. I'll choose, for example, to be 1 for now, and I will use that client dot the same method. Once it's done, we will need to do something. Okay, so what I did right now is I wrote a very quick code that what will happen is it will connect to a web service allowing on the Azure, get some data, and I need to display this data on my phone. So I can go on the main page here and add a control to display my data like long list selector. You will see that what I did in Blend, I'll be able to still to do it here using the code. So instead of just using the height, I will just remove that, and I will just remove that. Okay, I will need just to tell this control that my content is taking the full size of the page. So when you look, it will be auto and auto, which means that this number have been automatically generated. Let's give this list view a name. So let's call it long list selector and call it activities, for example. Let's find some data. We're done quickly with the design. Let's go here from my main page, and once the trip is loaded, go for the items source equal e dot results. I'm done. That was a very quick finding application in a single page. Let's build.
Any questions so far?
So can you see now my emulator? I'm using it for displaying my app on my desktop. It looks really ugly because I'm trying to parse an object and send it for the UI. Well, the fact is I'm not a graphic designer. I don't know how should I design something like this. So let's move for the data binding and for a quick minute, and let's again try to make this look nicer, like we call it. So let's get started. I'm done with code. It's from now on just XAML. So let's stop the debugging and back for our presentation. Okay, so let's go for the data binding. For the data binding, normally, when we were talking quite a long time ago, when I was thinking about designing an application that will contain a set of text boxes, so I would go for TXT, for example. Similar concept, yes, but only with SOAP or REST services. It's exactly, by the way, so there is no limitation even on the data source you're thinking about. I've been working with apps with banks who are using JSON as a backend. REST services is still supported. SOAP is still supported. WCF can have any type of data binding you're looking for as a front end. It depends on how you are going to connect with your clients. So again, for the data binding, you can see that for example, my textbox.text and equal hello world. You can do this on the back end, which is the default scenario. Everyone, when they were thinking about a quick app, this is what we normally do. In complex applications, this code will become a disaster coming for you. So take care, because it's a big problem to manage this kind of stuff in a very big app. For example, I have a single entity. This entity alone contains around 250 property. If I thought about setting every of this property on adding and editing and updating and deleting, I will not complete this application within this year, maybe within 1 or 2 years next. So I talk about data binding. So data binding is a very unique tool which will support, instead of writing everything on the code behind, everything will go for the XAML. So the modification would be a very quick. The designer can use all the different properties they have to display a better locking of the objects. So in text, instead of just writing the value, we can say for the directions, in the text itself, on the text itself equal binding directions, which means look for the object that this text box contains its data context, look for a property called directions, and then add it for a value for the text box, which is this is what exactly that we're going to do. When I, in my app, go for the activities and click assign it to a list, I did nothing except assign it to a list. So the list does not know how can I display it. And I am not a technical person, I'm a technical person, I'm not a designer to complete this kind of design for them. So I needed someone from the graphics team. I will tell him, this is the model I have, please tell me how can I display this kind of data. So using data context or item source for the list items, using binding property inside any property you have in your XAML controls, you can fully customize the layout of your application. So sometimes you will need the property whenever it has been modified to notify the owner that there is something have been modified, please update your UI. People who are familiar with Ajax, ASP.NET, and coming from older days like me, they will face always a problem that whenever they are going to change Nike using this. So I think I didn't get the question. So can you please hold your questions, because I will need to answer those. So please hold your questions. I'll hold them at the end of the presentation if you don't have time.
I was asking if the application will get laggy if you've got a few hundreds of kind of assignment to the text instead of data binding. I think that's how. Is that correct?
So yeah, Mama is telling me they have a couple of hundred. No, the fact is it's not, because simply the UI will start rendering and the rest of the components will be loaded asynchronously. So whenever your 100 text has been loaded, your UI would be displayed, and whenever any property will be arrived, it will be added to the control. Plus, guys, even if you have a couple of hundreds of text, do you think that a dual core processor with 1 GB RAM will face a problem with managing this? I was running a database retrieving a query of 2.8 GB per second on a server that is running actually on just 16 GB, but this is amount of query, it's amazing. No, it depends. Again, your design was length and binding would be much faster when assigning data to the text instead of using the code behind. Back again for iNotify property changes. So it's an interface that you can use for your item model to notify the UI that there is a specific property has been changed in your class. So you can, at any point of time, whenever you are going to change the model, it will be automatically populated to the UI. There is a property has been modified. Please add and you update the text box. How can I use this kind of property change, iNotify property changes? That was a quick implementation for it for Windows 7.1. I will completely ignore that. That's dead. Let's go for Windows Phone 8, where you can go, for example, and say, what I would go is in iNotify property change it. I'll say add the interface, right click and implement the interface explicitly. So what will happen is it will add all the different methods that you need to implement your interface, like this one. And you can say, okay, whenever I have a property has been changed, please go and on notify property change and I'll notify that there is a property has been changed. So this will always raise an event for the UI control that there is a specific property has been changed. Please update yourself. I have a couple of. So binding to lists, it's quite different. You have two different properties that you need to care of. Something called the item source, the one that I said from the code behind earlier, which is I said item source equal activities list, if you can remember, and it will display all the different items. But there is another property that we didn't use, which is called item template. I didn't design a template for displaying my items when I'm going for the binding. This is exactly what we are going to do right now. So there is something else which is called observable collections. It's typically as I notify property change for the item, but instead of a specific item, it's like a list which will notify its host that there is an item has been added, item has been deleted, or item has been updated. But it's not responsible for updating every single component. It's responsible only for updating its own properties, not the child component it currently has. Okay, so there is a design pattern. It's called MVVM. It's called Model View Model. It's for people who are familiar with MVC. It's a kind of replica of an MPC, but for more powerful devices instead of web interface. The beauty about MVVM, it's a separation of concern. You have the model, which is the one class responsible for all the different components you're going to display on the UI. The view model, which is the class that has its properties and method of the things that you are planning to view. And the view itself, which is a XAML file owned by the graphic design team who is responsible for customizing the application. Why MVVM? If you are going to develop your app with, again, Windows 8 and Windows Phone 8, this would be a very good architecture, since you will having a centralized framework that will contain your views and view models. And for models and view models. And for the views, you can develop a custom one for Windows 8 and a custom one for Windows Phone, which will be really, really quick. There is an article, which is I'm going to show the slide with you, will find it, about how you can use model view model in Windows Phone applications. And there is something called MVVM Lite. It's a very, very quick framework for developing the application. Thanks, Eduardo. So more best practices and guidelines. So binding and converters, very useful when you are going to use styles instead of controls. Most of the time, try to use styles. Don't use controls for displaying an entity, which is just exactly what I'm going to do right now. Converters can help you converting one value to the other. So for example, in my database, I will have all the currency stored as, let's call decimal values. I will need to display these currencies instead of displayed as a decimal value to just contain a decimal value plus a $sign at the end, or a quick conversion from one currency to the other. You can use something called converters by implementing an interface called iValue converter, and it will take the value and will completely return a different type. You can use it to pass it an item ID to load its picture and add it to the UI. I'll be sharing with you some of these samples if we have time at the end of the slides. There is nothing called multi-binding in Windows Phone 8 and Windows 8. So whenever you are planning to use a first name plus last name kind of example by binding both properties together on a single text box, it won't work. So as a quick option, use a stack panel. Then in the stack panel, add a first text box that will contain the first name plus a space, add your last name for doing everything from the UI. And one general question, or one general recommendation, don't depend on your server to do everything. You have a client and it has a huge power, use it. So most of the Windows Phone will be released by at least one core or quad core of 1 gigahertz with 1 gigabyte RAM. Think about using this kind of power when designing an application, don't throw it away. When you are thinking about loading images inside the application, there are multiple ways if you are looking for it. There are loading images from the assets folder, which is a folder available on the installation path on the phone. So you will need to set some properties to load this kind of data, but you are loading data locally, which won't be a problem. A second option would be yes, we will deliver the slide for sure. Another option would be from web, which is, for example, I need to load data from a website or something, which would be a very good option for some cases if you are connected to an IIS web server or Azure account. A third option would be loading binary data, which is, for example, if you are going to serialize your object and send it through WCF web service at the phone, you will receive only an array of bytes. So you need to convert this array of bytes into an object. And the final one, which would be loading an image from the file system. So these general ideas will require grouping all the different sections together into a class. I call it, for example, custom image converter, and you can use it for passing an image from one value to the other. Controls versus slides. Don't implement user control for everything. Just try to manage, think about user controls when you are trying to manage a list of objects that will require a lot of interaction. If you are managing a single object for user style for displaying this object, instead of just have to write a full control for it. A last thing, which is using animations and transitions, there is a very large library released with Windows Phone 8 that you can use for building a very, very, very useful UI kind of going in and going out kind of a stuff, and don't really let things suddenly pop up in your screen. So try to make everything as well as possible animated and interactive with the user. Let's back again for our demo, and let's see how we can use Blend and Visual Studio to make this list of activities look nicer. So back again for my application. Yes. Hope I didn't lost my code, so let me load this. So what I did so far is we've developed a quick main page that is containing, if you look here at the right side of the document architecture, or we're calling it, you have a title area, which is a stack panel containing 2 text boxes lying after each other. You will have a content panel, which is a grid that will contain a list of activities item, and the output of the application was, as you saw earlier, was this. A list of activity displayed by the object full namespace. Session samples.activity, service.activity. This is not what the users want to see. Let's add more functions to it. Let's go for our blend. Right click on the list, and I need to add additional templates. I will need to add the item template and create a new one. This will create a new style for my application. I will define this class, for example, on my application, or I will create a new resource dictionary and add it to contain all my styles. I will call this one activity view style. That's it. I will have only an empty grid that will contain my data. I would say that the width of this item would be, for example, 400 pixels, and the height would be, for example, 100. That's for now. Let's add things that I need to bind data for. So let's take, for example, a text block, and inside this text block, I will say for the text property, create a data binding, choose data context, and let's map it to activity name. Click OK. You can right click on this text box here and choose, for example,
what's the activity name?
Okay, so the activity name, if you can remember, in the code behind, I bind it and a list of activities. So each one of these activities has a set of properties. One of the properties is called the activity name. Okay. So the activity name is the property that I want to display when I'm listing an items here. I can go for my style and choose, for example, apply resources. I will have all the predefined templates that Windows Phone provide me available. So I can say, use this text style as a way of displaying the item itself. Let's click save. Let's save our main page here. Let's go for our Visual Studio, accept and then press F5. When you look now at the emulator, you will have nothing, which means I bind it. No, actually, the data is here. So you will have here a list of proper activities that we have quickly built in our jump list, and it's all available in this list right now. People can design very quick applications with things like that. So think about, again, your design. Try to isolate your UI as much as you can from back end to front end. And again, when you are thinking about data binding, think about a style like the one we've built earlier, a style that is going to display the list of activities. I believe I'm done for this session. I'm open now for as many questions as you have, for at least 30 minutes more, unless you're planning to run. But thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us. I think I had a question. So for each one of those texts, I have an instance of a data template. No, that's not correct. So in Blend, when you look at, for example, the list item, when I right click, I choose, for example, edit template, edit additional template, edit item template, edit current now, since I have one already generated. I can have, when you take a look at the XAML, in the data template, it will have a grid that contains a text box. You can have many text boxes in this area. So let's add another one here in the same control. Inside this text block, I will need just to get a name of a property. So just give me a second. Let's say, for example, of 0 dot. So let's also display the duration to my screen. So I will go for the blend. For this text block, read data binding. Again, go for data context. Choose path, enter the data context, and click OK. Let's save and go again, Visual Studio. So now you are having here a text and the different entities inside my text box within a single action. You only design a single data template for all the different controls that you want to display. What kind of image does Windows Phone, Windows 8 emulator take? So define image. No, actually, it's running was as a part of the SDK. The Windows Phone emulator will have it has its own image when you are going to run it on Windows when you are going to run your samples. So it's only a single images. If you have another.
I mean, do you mean like image as the Windows the operating system image, or images as pictures?
Ah, okay.
Okay. I mean, there are a lot. I can share with you the whole list. I think they can take them all. I'm not sure if there's something that is not that can be viewed. Like what you can have on the window is gonna work on the phone. I never ran into someone having a problem with this so far. So I mean that the most of the okay. If I have a Photoshop image, yes. Yes, GIF files are not supported, but can I place it inside? You mean a kind of a PSD format?
Yes. The PSD is for Adobe, no.
It's not. But I think there was
PNG.
okay.
So my recommendation is I will normally use honestly PNGs because PNGs are vector based and vector based looks really nice on mobile devices. I'm using this a lot in Windows 8. And regarding can I place it inside the application? Yes, you can, but inside the assets folder, that's an option, which will add it as a part of your package. The other option is to display it, for example, from a web services or from a URL like the one we discussed earlier on our solution. Back to the question of that's what I meant. Each one of the activities is placed on an instance of a data template we made. Yes, that's exactly what would happen. You will have in each control something called item template, okay, an item panel template. Item panel template, it's a way of grouping all the different entities together. Item template is how you're going to display a specific item. Good, so thanks everyone for attending our session today. I hope it was helpful. actually, there is a poll that we would love that you would actually help us take.
Just sorry guys if I did not put all the the countries. If your country is not listed, because there's a limit with the link. If your country is not listed, you can send it to me in a message or something. Okay. Okay, thanks all, and see you next session is gonna be in January. I'll be tweeting about it, and please follow me at Twitter m_emm, and you'll find the you'll find the list of I mean we're gonna post and I'm gonna tweet about the next session. It's gonna be building Windows Phone 8 applications. Now we're gonna get started with hands-on on coding, and starting from building and then using features asynchronous and learning what asynchronous is, and new features NFCs and these stuff as well. So see you next year, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year for all of you guys, and thanks for attending the session. I hope you all enjoyed it. See you. Bye bye.